Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People. In today's episode, Entitled X landlord demand I leave behind the washer and dryer I paid for. Entitled kid tries sending his police officer dad after me in a /pro revenge attempt, his plan backfires. Patient's boyfriend mad he has to pick up his own Uber Eats. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Entitled X landlord demand I leave behind the washer and dryer I paid for. So for the past 2 years I 25M lived in a small apartment building. The apartment didn't have laundry room for the building when I moved in, but did come with hooks up for a washer and dryer in the apartment, so I bought them myself because I work for a wildlife sanctuary and I get pretty dirty during my work. Just the other day I had to chase down and wrestle one of our wild boars, Bacon. We didn't name him, but he came with that name, who loved to escape his pen and thinks it funny to play chase. I got me completely dirty. I was covered in grass stain and mud. So I very much need them. My boyfriend and I just got engaged, and since my lease was up, I moved into his house with him. I finished moving everything out of my old apartment yesterday, and I thought nothing about taking my washer and dryer with me as I had bought them. My boyfriend had some, but they were old and kept breaking down and were costing too much to have fix. Well, I woke up this morning to multiple missed calls from my old landlord. I left my phone number and new address in case any mail was delivered to my old places. I called him back, and he asked me why the washer and dryer were gone. I explained that I took them with me. He started freaking out, saying that he had put that the place had a washer and drying in the ad for the place. Apparently, I have raised the rent due to them. He started to demanding I bring them back because the new clients he has set up to move and had already signed the lease are not interested in the place without them. Even threatened to call the police if I don't take them back. I got angry and told him that I would do no such thing, reminding him that they belong to me. I bought them, and I still had the receipts from when I bought them, as well as text from him when I moved that explaining I was buying them myself. He again threatens to call the police. I told him to do it and see what happened and hung up at that point. Personally, I don't think I'm in the wrong. I bought them and they weren't cheap, so I feel I have the right to take them. My boyfriend is on my side, but today, the coworkers said they think I'm the asshole for not telling the landlord I was taking them. In my opinion, that should have been obvious. I paid for them, why I would leave them? Well, my landlord went through with calling the police. Because the next day they showed up today. Honestly, nothing really noteworthy happened. I explained to them what was going on and showed them the receipt for the washer and dryer as well as the text from the landlord I had from when I told him I was buying them. The cops took my statement and left. My boyfriend's father is a lawyer, and he is going to be contacting my landlord and sorting everything out. He advised me not to respond to said landlord anymore for the time being. Your coworker is an asshole and an idiot. Absolutely, came here to say this too. Whatever you bring into a rental property you take when you leave. Why on earth would you leave behind expensive appliances that you paid for? Your landlord and coworkers are morons. Yeah, you're good. You bought it. He's demanding you leave your stuff. It's no different than demanding you leave your TV or shampoo. He's off his top if he thinks he's gonna get it. We'll need an update. Yeah, maybe your coworker could give the landlord their washer and dryer? Entitled kid tries sending his police officer dad after me in a /pro revenge attempt, his plan backfires. From the mid-90s through early 2000s I've spent my summers working as a counselor at a Boy Scout summer camp. I've worked in several different program areas, but this story happened when I was the director of the rifle range. Every week we would get a new group of campers, and when they came up to the range for orientation I would go over all the safety rules. I would finish by telling the kids, you all get one warning on this range, and this is the warning: there are only 2 safe directions to point your rifles, up in the air or downrange. It doesn't matter if your gun is loaded or unloaded, if you break this rule and deliberately point your rifle in any other direction, you will be kicked off this range and will not be allowed to shoot here for the rest of the week. I would go over all of these rules again for the kids on the first day of merit badge classes to satisfy the safety rule requirement for the badge. And there were plenty of posters hanging around the range with all of the safety rules on them. In other words, there were no excuses to break them. One day the scouts in my merit badge class were practicing shooting for the test they had to take at the end of the week. One scout, the entitled kid of this story, thought it would be funny to point his rifle at another scout and spout off some random action movie line. I ran up and snatched the rifle from his hands and yelled, "What the hell are you doing?" The entitled scout responds, "Yes, BB, but the gun wasn't loaded." Me, recite the safety rules now. The entitled scout recited them all, including the part about pointing the gun in a not safe direction. I told him to hand over his shooting ticket. I tore it in half and said he was done on my range for the rest of the week. Later that afternoon the range was open for free shooting. Everything was going smoothly, until I noticed the entitled scout walking up the trail towards the range with his father, an assistant scoutmaster who was built like an NFL linebacker. After the round of shooting ended, I called a ceasefire and told my assistant to keep an eye on the range while I handled the situation that was about to happen. As I approached the entitled scout and his father, he jumped up and down, pointed at me and yelled, "Yes, that's him. He's the one who tore up my ticket and kicked me off the range." He looks at me and yells, "Yes, you're gonna get it now. My dad's a cop. And you're going to be sorry for what you did." Before I could get a word out, Cop Dad gets in my face and started chewing my ass out drill sergeant style. Now this story happened so long ago that I don't remember exactly what Cop Dad was shouting. I mostly remembered the eating grin the entitled scout gave me as he watched his father tear me a new one. I just stood there quietly and patiently, waiting for NY turn to respond. Finally Cop Dad said something along the lines of, "CD, so what do you have to say for yourself?" Me, "Yes, I did tear up your son's shooting ticket and kicked him off my range. But did your son mention why I did that?" Cop Dad's face went from angry to inquisitive. He blinked in rapid succession as he said, "CD, and no, now that you mentioned it, he didn't tell me why." We both turned our attention to the entitled scout. His smile faded and he shrunk in our presence as he realized that his plan had just backfired. I loved returning the same eating grin that he gave me a few moments earlier. To the entitled scout's credit, he did tell the truth. He probably knew better than to lie to Cop Dad. And if looks could kill, the look on Cop Dad's face would have killed his son several times over. After a moment of silence, he finally said, in one of the most intimidating voices I've heard in my life, "CD, go back to camp and wait for me at your tent. I'll deal with you soon." The entitled scout left to the tune of Dead Man Walking. Cop Dad turned to me and apologized for getting angry and chewing my ass out before knowing all the facts, to which I accepted his apology. For the rest of the week Cop Dad would come to the range every day during open shoot my rifles and would hang out and talk with me. Turned out he was actually a pretty cool guy. At the end of the week he told me that when they get home, he will finish his son's rifle shooting merit badge, and he'll make sure that his son will never disrespect a firearm ever again. Love that Dad actually realized his kid was wrong. Though Cop Dad totally reamed my $dollar out first, I'm glad he learned a lesson in the end, and hopefully won't treat other civilians down the line the way he treated me that day. That is the most fortunate end possible for the entitled kid. I do a little shooting at a local range and have seen the safety officer boot people for even accidental safety violations. He isn't an asshole, but gun safety lessons need to be learned without mercy. Make even a slight mistake, you're done for the day. Do something egregious and gone for good. Fortunately, I only had a few instances where I had to deal with scouts and scoutmasters who broke safety violations. This story specifically was my most memorable. Patient's boyfriend mad he has to pick up his own Uber Eats. I work in a high-level hospital as an ICU nurse, and my managers are fantastic with staffing. Meaning if you have a crashing, heavy workload patient, they'll make the other patient you have an easier one so you can focus on the sick one. For a background, ICU nurses have 2 patients and we specialize in critical thinking, whereas the telefloor is the normal part of the hospital people think about and holds less sick people who don't need as much attention, so these nurses have 6 patients and specialize in tasks and prioritization. So the beginning of my shift after report, I show my face and say hi to my less sick patient who is doing fantastic and just waiting for transport to take her to her telebed. I say I'll be back around 9 p.m. in 2 hours, unless she needs me for something, so this gives me time to stabilize the sick patient next door. Unfortunately, the sick patient in room 1 starts coding, and the team is actively doing CPR. Crash cart in the hallway, 3 docs here, whole team to try to save this young dude. My team is working on meds, intubating, keeping compressions going, etc. while I'm talking with doctors about what could have caused it, and I'm halfway outside the room for the healthier patient in room 2. She sees me through the window, presses the call light, and I ignore it because I have what should have been obviously very pressing matters. Her boyfriend ends up opening the door and standing in the doorway to just stare at me with his arms crossed. Just to give them the benefit of the doubt that she could be concerned about her health, I say, "Is everything alright?" And he goes and tries to lead me inside. Of course I only pay attention to him when the docs go into room 1 to brainstorm on their own and assess where to go if we get the guy back. I look back through the window of room 1 and realize I can give them 5 seconds to make sure nothing funky is going on. So she says, "Can you get my Uber Eats order?" It just said it arrived downstairs. I swear I could have had a stroke from high blood pressure at that moment. So I kindly say, "I'm sorry, I'm busy with another critical patient. Could you?" I look to the boyfriend who's plopped in the recliner with his feet up watching Netflix again on his phone. "Go get it for her?" And he goes, "I'd rather not." Oh. OH, good sir? You don't want to? You saw the mess next door through the window, me talking seriously with 3 docs, and the hot mess of people outside your room as we try to save a life. So I tell him I can't. The entire team is actively trying to save someone and none of us are available to leave, so either you get it or I can have someone get saltines for you instead. He sighs, gets up slowly, and then says fine. I guess I'll go get it then as I turn to head back into room 1. Dude literally has to turn his shoulders to slide through the massive group of people, still pissed he has to take 1 elevator down. When they get moved to another room around 10 p.m., he's speaking loudly on the phone. Someone saying things like the nurses are rude, they won't even get food for their patients, etc. The icing on the cake? She had just gotten off an insulin drip for being in a diabetic coma. Never have I met a more entitled person who put having to walk and get their own food delivery above someone else's life. Having literally had a patient in the next bed push the curtains back to ask if we could keep the noise down and turn the lights off whilst we're doing CPR on his neighbor, nothing surprises me anymore. I get that patients aren't at their best when hospitalized, but this is straight out of a Monty Python sketch. I can't imagine bothering hospital staff with such an ignorant request. I don't care if the nurse had been sitting there playing Candy Crush on her cell phone for the last 30 minutes. Uber Eats has nothing to do with the hospital. Why on earth would I bother staff with it? My hospital just instituted a rule that nurses and techs are not to leave the units to get food deliveries. If there's a family member who can go get it, fine, they can order it, and the family has to go get it. It was getting out of control with patients and their family ordering shit and expecting us to go to get it. We had one point who ordered 3 to 4 times a day. Don't even get me started on the fact that most of the people ordering food were getting food they shouldn't be eating. Cardiac patients ordering fatty or high salt meals, diabetics ordering sugary desserts, etc. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.